If every single day people are just trying new things and then sharing what they've learned and creating new connections and joining dots differently, I think that's a really interesting road for any organisation.
This is Velocitize Talks, and I'm Eric Jones. I'm here with Lizzie Shupak, who's the co-founder of Curve. Lizzie, it's great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about Curve, tell us a little bit about it, and also the insight that led to its creation.
Absolutely. So we describe ourselves as a creative leadership and culture change organisation, and our focus is on working with senior leaders inside brands to thrive in uncertainty and navigate change. And most of the time that change is being driven by digital transformation in all its various guises. And I guess our insight was that the difference between companies that succeed and don't is the ability to conceive of new ideas and then get them out into the world at scale. And one of the most challenging things in that process is facilitating the change that needs to happen within the organisation for those innovative ideas to take root and really realise their potential.
You know, Curve helps organizations with workshops and things like that. What's something that you've sort of observed almost all companies, brands get wrong with workshops?
The thing that most organisations get wrong is underestimating how powerful they can be and not giving enough time and consideration to what change you want to take place as a result of the workshop. The workshop as a format is extremely expensive for an organisation in that you're asking for a lot of people's time, usually for quite a few hours, and that's a golden opportunity to do something amazing. I guess the secret or the clue is in the name. It's a workshop. It's a place for getting work done, and I think a lot of organisations see a workshop as a bit of time out from the day-to-day, not really associating with the day job, and often not really prepared to lean in and make a contribution and use it as it should be, which is a change tool.
Many people want change. Very few people actually will volunteer to do it. What are some of the tools or tactics or processes that you've seen companies employ, that you've helped them employ, that help that change take root maybe a little bit more quickly?
I guess the mantras that we employ is the learning by doing. So our approach is very much experience the change, experience what new looks and feels like in a safe surroundings, where we're essentially the safety net. So we'll construct programs with organisations, and we're essentially saying all of your time with us, you can take the risk. You don't need to worry if you mess up. It's basically on our heads. We're going to help you experience what change looks like, and we're going to work with you on organisational behaviours that will make this feel habitual. We'll give you ways to communicate what you're doing and the change you're creating more widely in the organisation, so that at least other people know what's happening and aren't surprised, and at best they will be actively supportive and curious and kind of keen to get involved as well.
You know, experimentation, sort of testing and learning, failing fast. These are all incredibly important things, probably more so in the digital space than ever before. How much of an organization's time do you think they actually should be devoting to this on a regular basis?
So I think it should be all the time. I think that should just be the way in which you work. It's much easier to de-risk things by, with everything that you're doing, thinking of what element of this am I least certain, and what's the quickest thing I could do to remove that uncertainty? What's that quick experiment I could run? What's that one piece of data that I need that will give me the green light to go to the next step? It's all about discovery, and it's all about learning, and it's about setting yourself up as an organisation so that there are never these points where you've invested a huge amount of money, everything's on the line, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work and people's reputations are on the line, and it's very challenging. Whereas if every single day people are just trying new things and then sharing what they've learned and creating new connections and joining dots differently, I think that's a really interesting road for any organisation.
Mm-hmm. You've conducted some research on what creative leaders do. I wondered if you could share some of the insights from that research.
What the research was thinking about was, are there different models of collaboration that can be used in different situations? So for example, if you're looking to collaborate to create something new, the way in which you'll structure a team, the way in which you'll design an environment is very different to if you're trying to collaborate in order to ensure quality, for example, or if you're trying to collaborate to compete and the goal is speed to market. So what we were looking at was trying to break down some of these kind of quite generic terms and ways of thinking around things like collaboration, and thinking, well, how can we understand that so that when you're looking at an organizational problem, you can work with that team to redesign the processes that they use and the environments.
In an optimum setup, is there kind of a best practice around organizing your workshops in terms of like the people that you bring to the workshops and the different backgrounds that they come from, or does it not really matter?
So it really depends what the overall goal is. What we would say is that in any situation, you need all of the people in the room who will have a deciding vote on the outcome. So you need all of the right decision makers in the room. Otherwise, essentially, you're doing a theoretical exercise. You're taking people on a journey, and hopefully through the workshop, they are creating stuff. There's new things being developed in the room, and then you get to the end and someone says, but it all depends on so-and-so signing off on it. So our starting point is don't do it until you have the right people in the room. And again, because in our opinion, it's not a theoretical exercise, it's absolutely having an impact on people's work. So doing whatever you can do to make it really productive, but also really stimulating. And I think diversity of participants is really important to us. It's really useful to have conflict and tension of different perspectives colliding with each other. And we often talk about it as the creative clash. Mm-hmm. And very often people kind of shy away from conflict or assume that it's a very negative thing. And our approach is to say, well, it's generating energy, and that energy can be really destructive, or if it can be harnessed or contained or redirective, it can be extremely positive.
How about inspiring a culture of creativity or innovation through your workshops?
I like the academic definition of creativity, which is novelty plus utility. And I think that's really useful in a business context, and that's absolutely what we try and create in all our interactions. It's thinking about what's going to be useful, what does success look like, what does it mean for all of our criteria to be ticked. That's kind of our goal. We love taking people out of their surroundings. We like doing a thing that we call brain walks with people, where just partnering people up, sending them out into often the urban environment, giving them a way to have a structured conversation but take cues from what's around them, coming back into the room, putting their different points of view together, drawing threads between them, coming up with new ideas.
You know, you've won a ton of awards over your career. How has your approach to client engagements, particularly in the digital transformation space, changed over the years?
In every job that I've ever done, I'm one of those people who I like constantly learning, and I'm always the person in the organisation who is slightly unusual. So when I first joined Digitas, when it was LBI, And within my first 3 weeks, I received an email from the CTO that literally said, I hear you're the person to go to with briefs that no one else knows what to do with. And in the context of Curve, where I'm now creating client relationships, I'm responsible for those. I think one of the reasons why we have such interesting conversations is, first of all, it's so obvious that we don't have other stuff to sell. We're not coming with we want to do this piece of strategic work and then we're going to come at you with all of this other stuff. The most exciting and liberating thing has actually been stepping out of the agency disciplinary boxes. Mm-hmm. To just be someone who has a point of view and has some skills to kind of meaningfully act on that point of view to make a difference in organizations.
Is there a lot of prep work that participants have to go through before they, get to go through one of your workshops?
It varies. In an ideal world, yes, though it's not work that they do on their own, it's conversations with us. So in most workshops that we do, we want to have some kind of interaction with everyone coming into the room beforehand, particularly in really senior environments. Our starting point actually is always that people are people and we want to have a connection, because it doesn't matter what your job title says you are or what my job title says I am. It's, do we trust each other? Do we have a shared objective? And are we willing to work together? And actually so often in organizations, people will say, it's just amazing being able to have a conversation with someone without an agenda.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we all want to have relationships, right?
Exactly.
And organizations are built on that.
Exactly, though it's interesting because we've been having a lot of conversations recently around measurement and how to establish what does value look like within an organisation, and on a personal level, what's the shared or collective goal or outcome that we want to achieve, and how can everyone connect or orientate themselves around that outcome, around the work, and effectively be measured according to that. Because what's such a challenge, again, in so many of these large, complex organizations where there's kind of a matrix structure and it's kind of you're on a project or a program over here, but then you've got another stakeholder over there, and all of these dynamics make it really challenging to produce really inspiring, powerful work.
You've done your work all over the world. Have you noticed any differences in terms of the geographies? Certain Americans may like things this way, or Europeans like things that way. Any insights on that front?
Absolutely. I mean, there's the business culture in different parts of the world is so extremely different. In America, the aspirations have been much bigger. People have been are bolder in the way that they present themselves. The sort of scale of the vision is quite different. In continental Europe, in the Netherlands, for example, people are just very direct. When I first was in a meeting with a client in Amsterdam, and my thought was, if I said this in London, I would be kicked out of the room. But that's just the culture. And actually, it's really refreshing because it's really easy to get stuff done because you just know what people are thinking. And then in the UK, and I think it's exacerbated in kind of agency culture, but it's people are more conforming to their role. They're more conscious of what the boundaries are, and are in some ways more careful about stepping on other people's toes, or are more overtly polite, but that doesn't necessarily help because there's a lot more mind reading that needs to happen, which is, you are smiling, but I don't think you're happy about that.
Lizzie, one of the questions we love asking is whether there's a book that you'd like to recommend for our viewers.
My husband has just gone back to school to do his PhD at the Dyson School of Design Engineering, and his research is focusing on how you design for human connection, and he brings home piles of incredible books, but one of them is by a cognitive neuroscientist called Michael Lieberman, and it's called Social, and it's fascinating around the way that our brains work and how we are so fundamentally orientated to create human connections with each other.
Lizzie, thank you so much.
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. That was Lizzie Shupak, the co-founder of Curve.